In his most recent video, Tolerance and the Ground Zero Mosque, Thunderf00t makes a series of statements that I want to pick up on and then give my take. Firstly, he says that it is the right of the promoters of Park 51, it's not a mosque and it's not at Ground Zero, to build the cultural centre, but that people will judge them based on their actions, in the same way that the Westboro Baptist Church are free to protest, but are judged on their actions. The comparison with the Westboro Baptist Church that Thunderf00t makes simply does not hold up. It is perhaps appropriate to look at the principal promoter of Park 51, Faisal Abdul Rauf. Born in Kuwait, he is a naturalized American citizen with a bachelor's degree in physics from Columbia. He condemned 9/11 as un-Islamic, has set up the Islamic Cultural Center of New York, and has written books including What's Right with Islam is What's Right with America. He has been praised for his work on improving relations between religious groups by people such as Karen Armstrong and Fareed Zakaria. Indeed, under George W. Bush's presidency, he was twice sent as an envoy by the State Department to the Middle East to promote better relations between the US and the Islamic world, and a further 2 times under President Obama's administration. He is on record as saying that he wants to Americanize Islam. The Westboro Baptist Church is considered a hate group by many, not least the Southern Law Poverty Center. Rauf and his Cordoba initiative are in fact trying to stop hate. Moving on from that comparison, I want to challenge the idea that people are judged on their actions. They are judged on what people think their actions are. If you listen to a lot of the reporting about Park 51, you'll come away with the impression that it is the glorious 19 Memorial Mosque and will be built in the shape of a raised middle finger pointing directly at Ground Zero, 100 stories high, with a flag saying, "Death to America." That is, of course, not what is going on here. And so it's unfortunate that Thunderf00t repeatedly refers to Park 51 as the Ground Zero Mosque. It's not a mosque, and it's not at Ground Zero. This leads me on to Thunderf00t's next point: reciprocation. Thunderf00t sets up an analogy. Is it not easy to see how things might be misinterpreted if, a few years after extremist Christians destroyed the Kaaba with airliners, a group of Christians want to build Crusader House near the site? This is what's known in the trade as a straw man. It is a straw man for 2 reasons. Firstly, as I've mentioned, the name of the place. It is called Park 51. It was originally going to be called Cordoba House because this was felt to represent a time of religious tolerance, understanding and learning. Some people, and I believe they did this deliberately, misinterpret this to take Cordoba as a representation of Islamic imperialism and triumphalism. In order to avoid this misunderstanding, its name was changed to Park 51. Secondly, I would hope that reactions in the West would be a little bit more considered and based on evidence than in Saudi Arabia, a classic rentier state with little to no civil society. It would appear, though, that that hope is in vain. But let's take the reciprocation idea, and let's look at things from the point of view of the Cordoba Initiative. A respected American, sent by 2 presidents on 4 occasions to argue for the United States in the Middle East, who has repeatedly and publicly criticized terrorism, and who has a track record of trying to improve relations between the West and Islam, decides to buy a building near, but out of sight of, Ground Zero. There he plans to set up a community centre to make it clear that the actions of the 9/11 terrorists do not represent the views of the great majority of Muslims, and particularly American Muslims, by allowing for greater intercultural and interfaith dialogue. He hopes that this can help prevent a repetition of 9/11. He names the centre after Cordoba, because Cordoba is to him a symbol of the 3 Abrahamic faiths peacefully living side by side in a centre of learning. There is a backlash, with accusation of triumphalism, imperialism and disrespect. For merely saying that the organisation has the right to dispose of private land as it wishes within local ordinances, the President receives criticism. Islam is portrayed as a monolith of intolerance, incompatible with even the merest hint of civilization. Well-known science vloggers describe you as jerks. How would you feel in that instance of reciprocation? As a sort of obiter dictum, Thunderf00t mentions that only Muslims can visit Mecca. This is used for a somewhat predictable attack on Islam, that it is intolerant and so on. I would simply say that Islam is not a monolith. There are many different interpretations of it, as there are many different interpretations of what Sharia is or should be. The really unfortunate part here is when Thunderf00t says, quote, Saudi Arabia is maybe an archetypal example of what Islam has to offer. It's a mainstream Islamic country governed by Muslims who believe in the application of Sharia. End quote. It is trivial to show that this is wrong. Firstly, Saudi Arabia is different because it has the presence of Mecca and Medina, and the ruling House of Saud has used its status as guardian of the two holy places for its own ends. Secondly, as I have mentioned, it is a rentier state, with the implication that has for authoritarianism and civil society. Thirdly, the form of Islam that comes out of there, Wahhabism, is an austere fundamentalist version that most Muslims simply reject. Moreover, the figures show that in this assertion Thunderf00t is just wrong. Freedom House publishes an annual report, Freedom in the World, that assesses the level of political rights and civil liberties around the world. Using the listing of majority Muslim states in the world from Wikipedia, we can see that we are considering 47 states. Of these, 3 are about as bad as Saudi Arabia, 5 are worse, 38 are better. Indeed, Freedom House gives Saudi Arabia the worst possible score, 7 for political rights, and the next worst score, 6 for civil liberties. It is one step from as bad as it can possibly be. So to say that it is a mainstream Islamic country is simply wrong. Thunderf00t says that he is in favour of, quote, productive enrichment of society through cultural mixing, end quote, but that mainstream Islam as practice in the heart of Islam is antithetical to that concept because people pray in the direction of the Kaaba and non-Muslims can't visit the Kaaba. If you are really not aware of the criticisms by Muslims of Saudi Arabia, and if you're not aware of the many disagreements and discussions going on with Islam, well, frankly, I suggest you visit Park 51. If you want productive enrichment of society through cultural mixing, there it is, at 45 to 51 Park Place, Manhattan, New York, New York. Thunderf00t ends his video by saying, quote, I will not be lectured on the virtues of tolerance or accept bargaining chips labelled in the name of tolerance from someone who, in order to comply with their religion, gets down on their knees 5 times a day to pray to an icon of discrimination. End quote. I will not be lectured by someone who, so far as I can tell, has not even tried to research the subject at hand beyond the trivial and the superficial. I'm Landon Cole. I'll see you next time.